Hello and welcome back to another flute tip of the week. It's been a very busy time this week. I'm doing an opera production over in Surrey. We're doing Donizetti's L'Elisir d'Amour and it's sounding fantastic, but whenever you're doing pit work, it gets a little bit cramped. So apologies for not being very active on social media this week, because I have been in the land of no cell phone service. Doing collaborative music all week, it really got me thinking about how important it is to communicate with your fellow musicians. And so today I thought I would give you some tips on how to be able to give as clear a cue as you can when you're about to start playing. Cueing is an essential part of chamber and orchestral playing. Connecting with your fellow musicians allows you to perform cleanly, musically, and collaboratively. I think it's very important for teachers to, at a young age, introduce students to playing in duets where instead of counting the student in, they simply do a cue. Now, cueing is a physical indication of when you are about to start playing so that musicians around you know when to enter, so that you can all come in at the exact same time. You don't really want to have a kind of domino effect of, there's the flute playing and so I guess the clarinet needs to start and that means that the oboe needs to start and so on and so on. You want to be able to give something concise so that everyone knows there is where you play. And the two main things to think about when you're giving a good cue are how you use your breath and how you move your body. Now, one of the most important things to consider when you're about to cue someone in is the tempo you want to play at. So it's very important for whoever is leading the group to really know exactly what speed they need to be performing at. Otherwise, you're going to be leaving everyone else scrambling either to keep up or dragging to try and find out what tempo you're playing at if you haven't rehearsed it at that speed. So before anything, you need to really know the music so that you know exactly what tempo you're going to be playing at. Now, when you're breathing, both to prepare yourself to play as well as those around you, you need to have a couple of things in mind. As I said, it's very important to have the tempo in your head. Of course, you want to be able to breathe in a way that will fill you up so that you are going to be able to play comfortably and confidently, but you also need to be able to indicate to the others that they're about to play. And so the best way to do this is to take a few beats where you have the tempo internalized, and then you breathe for one beat, and then do a more audible breath for the second one. So the first beat is a nice slow and deep breath so that you feel really comfortable, and second one is a slightly faster intake so that it's more audible to those around you, and you do it for the duration of the beat so that they have a good understanding of the tempo. So if this is our tempo, you'll be breathing at, and if you're doing that on the flute, it'll sound like this. Now, you will have noticed that when I was taking in my breath, I was lightly bobbing my flute to the tempo that I was thinking of. And this just gives a little bit of extra help so that if they can't quite hear you well enough, they can have a better visual of the tempo you're already thinking about. The second, and one of the most important parts of doing a proper cue, is when you actually move your instrument and are about to begin playing. So if you think about when you're watching a conductor, they move their hands so that it's going at a speed that allows them to fully complete the movements without having to rush or go in a jagged way. So you will always see that a beat occurs when you reach the lower part of an action. So you'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And with this in mind, when you move your instrument, you want to imagine that you have the same kind of motion going on, but instead of going in a kind of triangle form, you're going to be going just up and down. So when you move your instrument, you want to be doing it roughly the same as how you would imagine your conductor would. So you will move your instrument slightly up, and then when you're bringing it down again, you will play right at the base where you want to have contact with the beat. So much like how when a conductor gives you a cue like this, you want to move your instrument in a similar way. But also keep in mind that to the eye of the audience, you don't want it to seem overly flamboyant, you don't want it to be distracting. You just want to do it lightly enough that it looks clean, but easily visible to the musicians around you. So instead of doing something, again, at the same tempo, where you go like this, You'll use your breathing to help you measure where you're moving your instrument so that you're able to give a combined cue. Another very important part of cueing is making eye contact with your fellow musicians. This allows you to really connect with each other and have a non-verbal understanding that, yes, the music is about to begin, so let's watch each other. It's also important to always have an eye on each other when you're actually performing. This doesn't mean you have to have your music from memory, but you do need to know it well enough so that you're able to look away once in a while and be able to connect with who you are about to be doing something especially connected with. So let's say you're in a wind quintet and you're about to be doing a slight duo section with the instrument in front of you. Let's say you've got the clarinet in front of you. You're going to be playing, and then when you know that you're about to do this section together, you'll make eye contact so that you both know, yes, I'm going to be listening to you now. This also lets you focus more closely to their dynamics, what color they're using, and how they're articulating, because it's important to make sure that everything you do is in sync. Again, I want to say the domino effect, because you don't want it to sound like one instrument is playing a note slightly shorter, and then after their note ends, the note that was supposed to be ending at the same time with a different instrument slightly lags behind and then is cut off. It doesn't sound clean, and it makes things feel a little more jagged, not just for the audience, but for the performers. Another important part of cueing is knowing who to follow. Traditionally, in ensembles that have the flute, it will be the flute that gives the general cue, because it's a little bit easier to see as it's above the stand, and with a lot of repertoire, it does come out as a leading voice. However, it's also important to know if you're actually going to be playing after someone. So if you're working on a new piece that you're not familiar with, the first thing you need to do is establish who plays first. Because if you have the clarinet coming in 3 beats before the flute, you don't want the flute to be giving the downbeat, because it looks strange if an instrument who is not going to be playing right away gives a cue and then does nothing afterward. One more thing I want to talk about is giving a cue when you're not going to be playing on a direct beat. So giving a cue when you're doing a pickup. And again, this ties into the motion of the flute as well as how quickly you're breathing. Now, when you're going to be coming in on a faster note, it's important to take, again, the time to take your regular breath so that you're nicely full up and you're not going to be running out as soon as you start to play, but then take a quicker breath that indicates to everyone else you're about to play. And instead of indicating that you're all going to be playing on the actual beat, so when your flute comes all the way down, you're going to be indicating that people need to play when you're reaching the top of the arc with when you're bobbing your flute. So instead of hitting on the downbeat when you have a conductor, you're going to be going at the top of the arc, because that is roughly where the half beat is. So if we're going again at the same tempo, but we're going to be coming in on an upbeat, it'll look like this. Overall, just try to keep it simple. As soon as you start doing something really big or trying to give an overly dramatic cue, you're going to start confusing people, because it's going to be a little bit more difficult to measure exactly how fast and how even you're moving your flute if you're starting to do something a little bit over the top. So even doing a cue as small as this is effective. Then you're ready to go off to the races. So again, that tip was cueing is an essential part of chamber and orchestral music. Connecting with your fellow musicians allows you to perform cleanly, musically, and collaboratively. I hope you find this week's tip helpful, and go out there and play with some other musicians. Get some fluties together and do some duets, trios, quartets. Or even once in a while, just get one of your other music buddies to join in and look at some excerpts, even if it means you're just playing in unison. It's very important to really hone your skills as a cuer so that when the time comes, you're not going to be leaving everyone out to dry. I'll see you all next week. Flute happy, cue happy, and collaborate happy. I've realized that I've never really spoken about my own relationships on my channel, and so I wanted to introduce you to a man who's been in my life for the last 6 years. This is Bill. He's a Japanese peace lily. He hasn't flowered in a long time, but he's the first plant I've kept alive for this long. And that's his girlfriend Bernadette. Yeah. She's only got one leaf, but you know, they're a nice couple.